Recorded live.
Hello, this is Kat Miller. It is Tuesday.
Tuesday. Maybe Wednesday in your world.
I see. It's Tuesday, July 5th, 2011, and I am here talking with Dane Kirby. Dane Kirby is our shaman, and perhaps he'll give you another perspective on what a shaman is here, and then we'll just get into it, okay?
Well, sounds good. We got into a discussion earlier, and it turned out to be death and death's role in our existence and when it transitions. And one of the things that I've been called on a lot to do are to help people transition. Because there comes a point where there is nothing that can be done to keep the person in this world. Their time's up. For whatever reason, it's time to move on. And a lot of folks call me up for that. They're like, look, we know the end is here. What can you do to make it easier? And that's another thing that a shaman does. So it's about making things easier. You don't have to be scared that death is here. It's okay. That's what death's, if you want to think of it, death's job. Somebody told me once, oh yeah, death's just another civil servant. But could be. And that's the whole point of it, is death's job, to get us out of the physical shell, that we were learning things that you can only learn as a physical being, and back to, I'm going to call it the source, back to God, back to the creation, back to where we all came from before we got the physical shell. So, and it's a beautiful thing to do that for people and with people. And the one thing about it is every time I'm there with somebody when they pass on, is I go with them. I never take them just part way and leave them. That's tacky, okay? I go with them all the way, so that until it's to the point where death truly takes over and they're okay and they're no longer scared. And then everything's fine. Now they have a smooth transition, and as they transition into whatever the next phase of life will be for them, they're not carrying the fear of death with them, because we took care of it when they passed on from this life. It's a beautiful thing to do. It's taxing. It's heartwarming and heartbreaking all at the same time, and then there's the family, or in some cases there's no family to take care of as well. And that's, and I'm not the only one that does that. There are other people out there that do that aren't shaman. But it's one of those things that if you ever get a calling to do something like that, to work out of hospices and help people, it's worth doing. It's always worth doing. It just makes you more and better yourself as you're helping them become more and better as they pass on.
Indeed. There's so much fear so often associated with the idea of death. And I kind of, as I see it, look at death as being similar to birth. Everything changes. You're back to original fear.
Mm-hmm.
With birth, everything you knew for that first 9 months of your life while you were in the womb is completely different. You have no longer your waterbed, food on tap, the absolute warmth, absolute temperature control, exactly the temperature you like. No longer do you have that steady heartbeat that you heard. The vibrations are different. It's no longer completely dark. Absolutely everything you knew about life has completely changed in birth. What if death transition is the same exact thing?
Oh, it is. I have no doubt about that. It totally is.
So you're near the time of death. You are reconnecting with the original fear at birth.
Mhm. Mhm. And depending on where you're at in life, if you look back and you did good as far as you could, doesn't mean you did great works and all this stuff, but you did good. You did right by yourself and others, and you're happy with it. It's amazing. Folks that way are like, "Hey, I'm okay. Come on, let's take care of this because it is time to move on," because they have that connection with themselves and the universe around them. The ones that are the most difficult to work with are the ones that felt like life screwed them over. They got cheated. So how dare they have to leave now? Even though they're getting cheated here, this is wrong to take them away. And they're bitter, they're angry, and they're scared. And then if you're scared and you're angry, well, that leads to hate. And that's a tough one to deal with when somebody is just really filled with hate about their coming, I guess you would say their coming passing. Is that proper English? That's really one of the most difficult ones to deal with, because if somebody's filled with hate, reconnecting them to everything and getting them to where they're okay when death does come, it's a tough call, tough thing to do. And truthfully, there's some people that you can't. I mean, they go kicking and fighting the whole way, and that's not the way we're meant to go. Because they're just going to come back the same way and still have to deal with it the next time around. Or the next, or the next. And that's not how we're meant to go. We're meant to go in the hands and the loving thoughts of others.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a total stranger. When it's the end and somebody's just sitting there holding you, that's all that matters. Somebody that gives a damn.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, can I say damn on a podcast? But that's the truth of it. I've seen it more than once in senior citizen homes. Old folks' homes before PC, and I was going through. I was 19 years old. I had just joined the Army, and I was on leave. Found out that an old friend was dying. I had known her since I was 5. She lived next to my grandparents. We'd go visit. And so I went to visit her, and she pretty much didn't know who I was. She had to be right at 100, about 99, 100 years old. She'd been in the nursing home for a couple of months. It had come on quickly. And Miss Sanders was her name. At least that's what I always knew her as, is Miss Sanders. I showed up there, and all I could do was just hold her. Because her mind wasn't there per se. Her spirit was still there, but it was definitely looking for what was coming, and she was okay with that. She had always been okay knowing that your time comes, because she figured she'd always done the best she could here. The next thing's just going to be more fun. And so it was really neat that I got to hold her for a while, and I left. And as I was leaving, this other elderly lady comes up to me in the hallway, and she thought I was her son. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was her son. How come she hasn't seen me in so long? What took so long? And I took the next, must have been 2 to 3 hours, talking with her. I basically pretended I was her son, okay? Because she was so desperate to find her son. He hadn't been by in ages. And as you got her all calmed down. She was happy as a clam. She was so glad her son had come to see her. And as I was leaving, one of the nurses pulled me aside and she said, "Give me your address." And I said, "Okay, did I do something wrong?" She goes, No, you don't understand. Basically, her family dropped her off here, is what happened, because they couldn't take care of her anymore, and they've never come to visit, ever. And that was 6 years ago. And I'm like,
wow.
Whoa. I said, that's not good. I said, that really sucks. And she said, yeah. She said, "You've done more for her than any of us have ever been able to do." And she said, "I just want your address to let you know how she's going to be." And I said, "That'd be great. Sure, here it is." I had changed duty locations during leave, And this card catches up to me a month later, and it was the head nurse. And she said that that night that the lady had passed on with a smile on her face, because, excuse me, she'd been waiting for her son for years before she could die.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so
the things we can do for our fellow humans, you know? And this was, Lord, this was, let's see, 19, 20, 39, 40. This was 30 years ago, and I still get teared up on this one. And I just took the time to help somebody out because it was the right thing to do.
You never know. You never know.
You just don't know. So take the time. And what's a little love going to cost you? Hear me, folks? What's a little love going to cost you to show it to somebody? You know? And you just, because you truly don't know what you've done with that love.
You don't know what kind of impact what you do has on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Simple little things.
Yep.
You know, when I was in Michigan, one day the waitress caught me crying at my table. And you'll probably remember this day. I started to cry because when I went to put salt and pepper in my hash browns, I heard a message: you can't decorate your hash brown. Patient we were working with at the time, we'll just call her Jane, had been moved from one room to another room the afternoon before.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew when I heard that I could not decorate my hash browns, that meant her room had not been decorated since she had been moved. I just knew it. And I started to cry because I realized I did have a connection with her girl.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she saw me crying, and she stopped by the table and wanted to know if I was okay and if there was anything that she could do for me. And I did explain to her why I was crying and how good it felt to cry.
Mm-hmm.
So the day I went to, this was a restaurant in the hotel where I was staying. The next day, I went back to breakfast at the same place and got the same waitress. And I was sitting at my table making blessed bucks and folding them
Mm-hmm.
and getting them ready to give to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
well, to disperse. And I called her over when she came by one time, and I asked her if I could talk to her briefly. And I asked her to please take, I probably had 5 or 6 of the blessed bucks.
Mm-hmm.
I explained how to work with them and gave them to her and asked her to please distribute them for me.
Mm-hmm.
She left the table crying because she felt such a need to talk to somebody about something that had been going on in her life. And I had made that okay. And she did give me a little bit of conversation about things that
Mm-hmm.
day. And she just looked at me as tears welled up in her eyes, and she said, "You have no idea how much you needed to talk to me today." And so we change people's lives every moment of every day. We are changing lives with things we do. I had no idea that I was going to have the kind of impact on her that I wound up having when I called her over to my table. My intention when I called her over to my table was, I want you to do these blessed bucks. And since I brought up blessed bucks, let me briefly tell people what they are. You write on a dollar bill or a $5 bill or a $10 bill, and I've actually done $20 bill, some kind of a beautiful wish or prayer for somebody. What I do is I write something like, may your life be filled with love, joy, health, and wealth. I usually put wealth at the end because I think of all of the other things as being the majority of importance.
Right.
And then I'll fold that dollar bill such that the beginning of the writing is easily seen, and then I will place it somewhere for somebody to find. I don't drop it on the floor because that gives the universe the idea that you don't care about money if you just drop your money and ignore it.
Right.
I don't put it somewhere where I know who is going to find it, and I don't wait around to see who finds it. I do it inconspicuously. I don't let people see exactly what it is I'm doing. The idea of the Blessed Bucks is about just caring to give a blessing anonymously to somebody else. And it cannot be anonymous if you know who it came or who it goes to and if they know where it came from. So it's kind of a blessing. Put on a dollar bill, a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a $20 bill, a $100 bill if you want to. Just set out there with the intention that it's going to make a difference for somebody. And it does come back to you. It is one of those pay it forward things.
Oh, yeah.
It does come back to you. You get something in return for putting out that blessing for somebody else. Anyway, that's what that was kind of about. But it was fascinating. I left breakfast that morning. I went over to the hospital, and I walked in the door and saw her husband, went to talk to him, and I said, just a second. I backed up, and I looked, and I realized, you don't have any kind of decor up in here yet. Well, we haven't done it. And I said, yeah, I know you haven't done it. I couldn't eat salt and pepper on my hash browns this morning. You're going to decorate this room, and you're going to do it now.
Yeah, I like that. It was the night I came in with a poster that I had designed and printed out, and I don't do design work. It's not my thing. My wife is the designer, not me. And I roll in the door and said, hey, guys, I made this poster today, and you started laughing at me. I'm like, what? You know, and we dolled up that room.
Yeah, that theme for that day was decorating your life, and we had so many theme days. It was fascinating to see.
Well, folks, what are folks out there? Have you ever thought of decorating your lives? I mean, really, folks, what do you do out there? You know, truthfully, does the opportunity come by often that somebody's dying and you can help them? Not really. It's not a common thing because, you know, what I do and what you do, Kat, most people don't do this stuff, okay? So what can you do day to day to make somebody's life better? And I'm not saying you got to go out of your way and jump through hoops. I'm just saying, what can you do, add one step in your day to make other people's lives better that you encounter? I mean, it could be something as simple as a real smile. Not a snarling smile, not one that somebody had to pull out of you, you know, but a real smile to people. It's like, well, I know living in Michigan, people still aren't sure how to handle that unless I'm in the country part. If I'm in the city, they're like, okay, he's smiling at me, what's wrong? But, it could be millions of things you could do every day for people just to make their day better. You know, and I mean, my favorite thing used to be to go put money in the meters. You know, and but they've changed it in Ann Arbor now to where they have the digital meters with the solar-powered central towers that you put money in and it gives a ticket, so you have no idea what the meter is, the person's at, what the number is, so you can't add more time for them. So I've had to find other ways. Yeah. I've been known to go down the street and offer free hugs. It's amazing how many people will take you up on that.
Indeed.
You know, free hugs are always free hugs are a good one. You know, and what other cool things? Just what can you do out there? And in the process of making somebody else's day better, you know you're having to make your day better so you can make somebody else's day better. So you're instantly being rewarded with your day's better because you're already thinking of, what can I do to make somebody else's day better? Well, in doing that, you have to make your day better. If you're doing it from the perspective of, oh, crap, okay, these 6 people will be better when I'm done today, but, you know, I don't really want to do this, then don't do it. Okay, you're wasting your time. You're wasting their time. Do it from the heart or don't bother with it, okay? So, literally, Kat, what would be a couple of good things you can think of to tell people?
Well, I was just taken back once again to my time spent up there with you in Michigan. And I was reminded of, was this like the first day I was there, or maybe it couldn't have been. It must have been the second or third day I was there. You showed up with coffee, and you don't drink coffee. And you wanted $1.85, which I don't think you ever got.
No, I never did. I said, just spent $1.85 on somebody's coffee. Who wants this stuff? You know, yeah. And it was, what was it? It had 2 sugars and no cream, wasn't it?
No, it was cream. Sugars and cream.
Was it 2 sugars and cream? Okay, yeah. I was like, okay, whose coffee is this? Somebody wanted coffee. I actually had to backtrack and go to the coffee kiosk and get it before I could get on the elevator. So,
what happened? Whose coffee was it? Do you remember?
It was your son's.
It was absolutely fascinating. This is a message of my son to call his mom.
Mm-hmm.
Dane comes up with this coffee, and nobody in the room wants coffee, 2 sugars, 2 cream. Mm-hmm. Nobody. Well, how does our Jane drink her coffee? Maybe it's a message from her. Nope, she takes it black. Her husband takes it black. Everybody else that drinks coffee, it's black. And I'm sitting there, I don't drink coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But it hits me suddenly. 2 sugars, 2 creams. How many times have I sat in my kitchen and watched my son pour coffee, grab cream, just dump, grab sugar, spoonful, put it in his coffee. I've been in Michigan for 2 or 3 days, and I have not called my son. This is a very clear message for my son. Yeah, you brought up Brent's coffee. Gotcha. How many times do you have an experience in a day where you have something happen that reminds you of somebody in your life? Perhaps somebody who is important right now to you, or someone who was important to you at some period in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Take it as a sign they are thinking about you.
Yep.
That they would like to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. And throw your ego the hell out and call them or go see them.
Take a moment right then when it's fresh, when it's there in your mind, and call them. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason for the call can be, I just saw somebody go heavy on the heavy on the cream and sugar in coffee, and it made me think of you. Mm-hmm. You would probably be very surprised to discover that right at about that exact moment, they were thinking of you.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of allowing them to just go on and forget about it and you continue to drift in your own world apart from them, You got their message, and you made the contact.
And in
How
doing
amazing.
that, you strengthen your connection with other humans. And the more connections you have, suddenly when your time does show up and it's time for, Big Daddy to take you wherever you believe you're going to get taken, you realize you've done good in life. You've connected with untold numbers of human beings in good ways. It adds up. And it adds up nicely, As one person said to me, it adds up to a minus. And I said, what do you mean it adds up to a minus? Well, the more neat things you've done for people and not expecting anything in return, you just did them because it was fun and it came from the heart, that in the end it adds up to no weight on your soul, so you fly so free when you pass on. Like, wow, it adds up to a minus. I like that.
Minus the weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's special. Well, we keep going back to Jane, our patient, our mutual patient, and I'm drawn back there another time. You probably really noticed and felt it when I first arrived there, that hospital room was heavy.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of melancholy in there. There were friends coming to see Jane. And
well, the only people that hadn't given up on the situation was her husband and myself. And all the staff, as far as they were concerned, they had written her off.
Yeah. And that was the first thing I felt I needed to do, is change that. Because when a person is in dire straits in the hospital, the last thing they need, if they are going to stay in this realm, if they are going to recover, I guess it's not the last thing that they need. It's more like one thing they certainly do not need is to be in an energy of melancholy. It was so fascinating to watch how everything shifted over the course of the next 2 to 3 days. It was so sweet to see her husband telling his friends, whenever they showed up and they had any kind of problems, he would say, go talk to Kat. Tell her about whatever it is that's going on with you. And they would, and we would work it through, and they would transform in front of my eyes and in front of Jane. We were doing these things in her hospital room. And occasionally these people would feel guilty that they were taking me away, my attention away from Jane. And each time somebody made some kind of a statement like that, I would look them deep in the eyes and I would tell them, make no mistake. I am working on you and your relationship and your connection to joy, to love, to life, specifically for her. It is in my work with you that she benefits, that she sees why she would want to remain a part of this world.
That's it.
And it probably took 2 or 3 days from the time I got there until we had the space in that room light and smiling. And Harry was just a huge transformation. And by the time our Jane was transferred to another hospital, about a week and a half later, it was huge. Everything was different. When she was taken into the new room at the new hospital, it was just a completely different feeling.
Well, people there operated from a different principle. They operated from, we're either going to get you out of here on your feet, or if you go out of here on your back, at least we'll have given it our best shot and we care. And that was a totally different atmosphere than the other place.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. We brought her into there in a higher space than she had been at the other hospital. I found it really quite fascinating. I mean, you want to talk about divine order of things. That day that she was transferred, first of all, we didn't have a clue that she was going to be transferred when the day started.
Yeah, it was all like, whoops, now? What? Yeah.
I was working on my computer. I had been doing some broadcasting of healing cards to her, and I was looking up stuff on my computer when suddenly I had a message come up from my son in the chat. Now, my son does not chat with me on the Internet. He just doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of interesting to get that message from him. And he's trying to spell and has no idea how to spell Fibonacci. But he's telling me Fibonacci, Mama, Fibonacci. When I finally figured out that it was Fibonacci that he was trying to spell, it immediately connected me to the Quantum K healing. There's a free healing video with Quantum K, about 23 minutes long. And when I typed that back in, the Quantum K, he said, yes, play it now. I went and I started that playing. 23 minutes later, as it was finishing, a transfer team arrived to take Jane to the other hospital. And, in fact, I'd gotten a call about 10 minutes before they got there. I got a call from her husband saying that they're working on getting a transfer team. She's heading to the other hospital. So if I had started playing the Quantum K right before they got there or right after I'd gotten the call from her husband, it would not have been completed before the transfer team got there. And I was kicked out of the room right after the transfer team got there. I heard Dan Aykroyd's voice, and then I saw Steven Seagal, and it was really amazing to see that Dan Aykroyd looked like Steven Seagal. That was one of the transfers. It was awesome to see that. Anyway, I got kicked out of the room like 30 seconds or less after the Quantum K healing video completed. And the fascinating thing was they warned her husband that the transfer itself was very dangerous, that very often during the transfer the patient declines and they have to go through a couple of days of recovery back to the point where they were before the transfer. And the fascinating thing was she improved through the transfer and was actually at a higher level when they got her all settled in her bed and everything at the new hospital.
So,
and so that was fascinating. And to me, it seems that playing that video for her helped to make that happen. And it just doesn't seem like any kind of coincidence whatsoever to have someone who never message me, giving me exactly enough time to play that video before the transfer happened. Just everything, in order, all the way around. And I guess I should let everybody know, in case they haven't heard me, Dane and me talk about this before, this patient is virtually 100%. Isn't she virtually 100% now?
Yep.
Virtually 100% recovered.
And they had written her off, half a dozen times? They were like, oh, yeah, she's not going to make it. And, there were 3 major crashes, and it's like over and over, that's all we heard. And it's like, shut up, go away. You don't get it, do you? And it was amazing what we had to, actually, in all honesty, taking care of her was much simpler than dealing with the horrendous attitude of, well, at the first place, of every doctor except for one that I encountered, and then the care staff. Oh man, were they like just going through the motions and didn't even care. And that was really shocking considering the hospital itself, because I've been to that emergency room many a time, whether it was on the receiving end or helping somebody, and found out that they had privatized all of that care now on the floor we were on. So it was actually no longer part of the hospital as it used to be. It was awful. Worst I've ever seen. And when we switched her over to the new place, it wasn't privatized. It was part of the hospital, and we rolled in the door there, and they were like, oh, yeah, this is no problem. This is easy, and we'll take care of this. And now, having said that, we did get two, yeah, because the third nurse we got to turn around. Two for sure that were just, they hated their life, they hated their job, whatever. Something was going on in them. And we didn't want them in the room with her. So now most people think, oh, what'd you do? Did you slap some evil mojo on them? And no, we just loved them extra. And that was more than enough to drive them out. They left. They're like, oh, and it ended up their schedules got changed to where they were no longer on it. Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of thing. But there was actually one person that the husband actually had to go say, no, I don't want this person in the room anymore. You know, because they just weren't paying attention. They didn't care. Now, again, I don't know what their home situation could have been or what was going on in their life. But if you're taking care of other people for a living and you're getting paid for it, and you're not doing it well because you're in trouble, burned out otherwise, get yourself some help. You know? So, yeah, we still ran into issues. We had to turn the floor blue to take care of a lot of static. But that's just more because so many people were passing away in the wing that we were in. Not really, you know, anything to do with Jane.
It's very difficult for an area that has seen death over and over and over to accept life. Mm-hmm. And that particular floor, that area of that floor, mm-hmm. had seen death over and over. It was a surgical intensive care unit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I heard a few of the nurses refer to the area, SICU, Surgical Intensive Care Unit, as SICU. Mm-hmm. And when I started to hear that, I put a cap on it immediately. I said, I don't care how you refer to this place, whether you call it surgical ICU, whether you call it surgical intensive care unit. You can call it either of those, but do not call it SICU. Do not call it SICU. Not acceptable. Yeah. And I got a couple of funny stares like, I didn't know I said that.
Yeah,
and
because it's automatic.
I brought the awareness to them. Don't tell somebody it's SICU.
Yeah. Because, you know, if somebody's in an altered state in some kind of coma, you don't know how that's wiring into them. You know, and literally just what you're saying could finish them off. So, yeah, that was always one of those things. And, you know, I have to admit, though, one of the things I did notice is as some of the people passed on in the wing close to us, it helped her make the decision, too. To, hey, I am staying. Mm-hmm. And because there was the one room right next to us, you couldn't miss it. And it affected her because you can't just pass on and it not affect the people around you, especially if they're in an altered state of some kind. And I really do believe that helped her decide, hey, I'm staying here. So many people are stepping up for me. So many things are coming together. And I've got a lot more cool stuff to do. And she does a lot of cool stuff, you know. I mean,
that's what I was called in for, is to make her aware of what she was leaving behind if she decided to go.
Mhm.
And I use reflex muscle testing in the work that I do, and that's what put me on the plane. Was I asked, is she supposed to live? And the answer was yes. I asked, does she want to live? And the answer was yes. I asked, is it her husband's wish for her to live that I am reading? And the answer was no. He wanted her to live, but the wish to live was hers. And the last question I asked, which is the one that put me on the plane, was, well, I guess it was a couple of questions. Will she survive? Will she live if I don't go to Michigan? And the answer was no. Will she live if I do go to Michigan? And the answer was yes. She's supposed to live. She wants to live. She will live. She won't live if I don't go to Michigan. She will live if I go to Michigan. Well, obviously, the she will live is congruent with me going to Michigan.
Yep.
So I was on a plane.
That's it.
And it was just a huge thing to see that and to realize that my decisions affected another so substantially. But you know what? Your decisions always affect more than just you.
Actually, I was thinking of it the other way around, dear. I think her decision affected you deeply.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because your life changed massively after this. You were not the same person when you flew home that came out here.
No, I was not.
I mean, you did a massive change.
Yeah.
It was cool to watch it, too. I enjoyed watching it. But I had better grade of popcorn, you know.
Yeah. We all have. We have major effects on other people in our lives. You went through some massive changes while I was there.
Oh, yeah.
And since then, between the two of us, we have seen massive changes in ourselves and each other.
Yes. Some real mean person made me get online with them and start talking, you know. Real turkey of a person, you know. Drug me kicking and screaming onto this talk stuff, you know. And
I can slap them for you if you'd like.
give him 2 slaps, yeah.
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 So
but, you know, we never know what good we do. Even just the small things. And it's amazing how the small things add up to a lot more than the big things. How the small things can turn it all around for somebody.
Indeed.
And, you know, I stick with that, you know, and I have researched. I've never been able to find it credited to anybody. But the saying of, you know, to the world, you may be just one person, but to one person, you could be the world. That is so true in every day of your life. Just the right deed at the right time literally can keep somebody from killing themselves. They could have been that close.
It doesn't have to be somebody you knew. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And you don't even have to know that you did it.
Yeah.
You could be the difference between life and death and not even know it. And it could be just being you that caused it. You
know, for years, I was always very careful about touching people. Even though when I was a little kid, I touched everybody. But, you know, as you get older and PC and all that garbage, oh, man, you can't touch people. And once when I was in some of the energy training and the Reiki, my Reiki master that I had encountered, or he had encountered me, or actually he drew me to him, I believe. I was in the class, and he was very precise about, look, guys, when you're working on the gals, be careful about it. Here's how you say some things. Don't say it this way, you know, kind of thing. And in the West, you know, they got issues with putting hands on breasts. Well, when this is taught in other parts of the world, they don't, you know. So make sure you clarify what's going on and make sure everybody's comfortable. Fair enough. So I'm on the table. We're doing practice session with some students, and it's just who I am. They can put their hands on me. I put my hands on them. And they end up zoning out more than I do because we get this beautiful trinity going with 3 of us there. And I heard somebody say, well, Ray, and that's my master, said, you keep telling us nobody can touch anybody, except, the people working on the personal table, but Dane gets to touch everybody whenever he wants. And then one of the women pops up, yeah, but he's Dane, it's okay. And I was like, oh, cool, it's okay. And then after that, and this was every bit of 17 years ago, after that I started going along and just letting my hands do whatever they wanted. And I said, let's see what happens here, because if I'm in the space where they will do no wrong, let's see what happens. And I would find myself just touching people as I would go down a street. And I have never, to this day, encountered a person that had an issue with it. And I've had several people over the years just stop me and say, wow, I really needed that. And I didn't even know I needed that. Thanks, dude. Just the whole, because it's what I do. It's who I am. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the right place. You know what I mean? I don't have an ego about it. I don't have I'm going to cop a feel. None of that stuff. I'm in the right place when I do this. And it's just the way it is. And there's been times where it'd go 2 months, wouldn't touch anybody. And then it'd be like a flurry of touches, And we all have our thing, That's what works for me. That's how it expresses through me. But everybody's got their own thing. There are people out there that, they can play music. Or they'll just be singing a cool song going down the street. And somebody can hear that song and go, oh, that takes me back to when I was a kid. Hey, when I was a kid, I always wanted to do this. Why shouldn't I do it now? It's just that simple. As you're expressing your joy out into the world in your way, it's contagious, and it can save lives every single day. Just because you're living and expressing it.
To be yourself.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to do what you feel inspired to do. It makes a world of difference. And I have to correct you, Dane.
Uh-oh.
There was one time I asked you about doing a podcast, and you agreed.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of psychic arm twisting there. You hint psychics after me, I can tell. Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
I was trying to sleep that night, and all of a sudden, these hinge psychics showed up with tire irons, saying, "Yeah, we're here to convince you the soft way." And I'm like, "Oh, really, huh, Kat?" And they all had your face and whiskers, so. Yeah, you just said it one time. Sure, Kat, sure. You keep believing that.
Yeah. But it's been just an awesome time with you. It really has been, and I so appreciate you giving me your time like this. It's just totally fun to do this, and I look forward to every week spending some time with you on this, and the exchange of energy is just amazing, and I just wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you, darling, for sending your hinge psychics after me. I still, to this day, you want? We should rub him out, Muggsy. Well, darling, what do you think? We've got 50 minutes here.
Yeah, I think that we're pretty good for the day. I think that we've come full circle around. It's all about connections with everybody. And there is one thing I want to throw out to you and to others, and maybe we can talk about it more on other talkcasts, but the touch, human touch, skin to skin touch releases oxytocin. And oxytocin is very healing. The oxytocin, that's the pit, tocin that they use for starting labor. It's what is the hormone that is released at climax in intercourse. It's the hormone that is released by the fetus when the lungs are mature enough, because the lungs are the last thing to get to maturity, ready to support life outside the womb.
Great, so I shouldn't be touching too many pregnant women. Great.
It is No, it's not that.
I know.
Oxytocin, though, is the stimulator of that, and it's a huge dump that happens that stimulates the labor. But it is the human touch causes releases of that, which it's just a good feeling hormone that also is substantially involved in healing. When you get a human touch on skin between lovers, between spouses, between mother and child, between father and child, you instigate healing. That's part of why mama kissing that wounded finger begins the healing process, because the oxytocin is released. And so besides all of those other things, and I just wanted to bring those other things in because people probably will recognize that oxytocin, oh, that's the pitocin, oh, that's the hormone for birth and so on. Anyway, it is something that is very healing, and that is why the human touch can be so healing, because it actually causes release of oxytocin.
And see that, hopefully folks understand that what you just said means they don't have to be a shaman or a cat or anything like that. They just have to be themselves and just touch another person. Makes a difference.
Share your energy, touch.
And folks,
don't care how
something that's
incorrect it is to touch anybody.
The one thing that's a really great one to do for anybody is if you say, literally ask them, hey, do you mind? Let me take away some of your tension there. And they're like, sure, okay, yeah. And what you do literally is just right there on top of the shoulders, between the neck and the tops of the shoulders, grab the muscles, just give them a nice squeeze and work them. Don't rip them off their body. Just give them a nice gentle squeeze and a work over. Have them inhale real deep and let go, and then when they exhale, you let go. And you watch the look of wonder on the people's face going, oh, God, I needed that. So anybody can do it.
Yep. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you next week.
And you too, darling, and the rest of you too, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.